Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Damon Bond, and I'm here to talk about how the Trump election will, in most cases, probably set America 50 or even 100 years back. And in addition to that, I'm going to do a comparative analysis on another place where election happened and it changed the world forever. Now, as broadcasting from today, the election is about 2 weeks over already, and we know the results. Donald Trump won. He didn't win by a landslide. He lost the popular vote, but won the electoral vote. As you know, his country is electoral vote that makes you president, not how many people like you. So this is interesting. So what does this mean for America, basically? Well, let's examine a few things over here. Number one, we know Trump has had a past of saying erroneous remarks. In New York City, where he's from and born, he was well-known town making a lot of statements that were maybe, it's not even about being politically correct, it's just about being indecent. That's the first thing. So he's going to bring that with him to the White House, unfortunately. And so far, we've seen who his cabinet picks are. Everybody from Mayor Giuliani, what some people applaud because he cleaned up New York City. However, he did it at the expense of certain individuals, primarily people of color, got caught up in that. If you look at another pick he has Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama, I believe, and we just look at his voting record, and you can see that it's been detrimental to people of color primarily, and other people as well. So what does this mean? How will it set it back? Well, for one thing, it won't necessarily improve the lives of whose biggest constituent is, and that is working class and poor white people. In any ways, the jobs are gone, the factories are gone, they're not coming back because that goes against the capitalist interest. The capitalist interest is to make much money as you can, is to increase profitability and to cut costs. Donald Trump is a capitalist, plain and simple, and that's what he's going to do. So with that said, you'll see many things curtailed. You see programs that were set aside for people of color will go, and this includes women as well, both white women and black women. You're going to see certain progressions that were made are going to go by the wayside. A number of things that happen to improve the American society, those things will be curtailed as well. Now, let's look at Nazi Germany, because there's been a lot of people who've compared what's going on with Hitler, Trump, to a Hitler. Let's look at these things over here. Nazi Germany, like America, was an advanced society. It was a culture society. After all, this is the home of people such as Beethoven, musicians Beethoven and others alike. This is the great philosophers, Goethe, Schiller, and such. It was a very educated society. So this was in a society full of backwards, people who didn't know anything. It was a very, very prosperous, educated society. So then you ask yourself, well, how could a man like Hitler come into power? Well, let's look at the first things over here. You had disgruntled people. So just like in this country, you have a lot of disgruntled people. They blame their problems on other things and what have you. You had that in Germany as well. Hitler preached the choir, so to speak. He was racist and anti-Semitic rhetoric, galvanized some people, caught some people's attention. Eventually he went to jail because he tried to overthrow the government. That didn't work out too well. So he was given a very, 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 very extremely long prison sentence for his crime because he did commit treason, and that was 5 years in prison. But out of that 5 years, he only did 9 months. During the time, he wrote a book. He was released. And he talked about bread and butter issues. He talked about the economy, infrastructure of Germany, making Germany's rightful place in the world. Now, let's look at today, 2016, at Donald Trump, right? You have the same thing over here. He was saying, yes, I'll make America great for you. He doesn't specify how, but he said that. I'm going to make it great for you. These are the things I'm going to do for you. Whatever those things are, I don't know, because he really hasn't had a blueprint. But a lot of people bought into it. For the first time in a generation, you have a certain constituency that say, here's someone who can relate to me. Here's someone who realizes what it is that this country needs. Now, mind you, Donald Trump is about as far away from the common man as you can get. All right, has nothing in common with the common man whatsoever. Donald Trump never worked. When I say work, I mean like a 9-to-5 manual job, 9-to-5 job. He never did it. His business was handed to him by his father, Fred Trump. But nonetheless, though, people for some reason believe they can relate to Donald Trump. And that's how we got into office. The masses were mobilized. So let's go back to Hitler in Nazi Germany. The Nazi parties went through trials and tribulations, but eventually they were legally elected. He didn't take over. He became a dictator while he was in office. He curtailed civil rights and civil liberties while he was in office. Germany, what we call the Weimar Republic, had a constitution, had a Bill of Rights. It had protection of minority groups. They had all these things put in place, just like how America has these things put in place. Now, just like America, Germany wasn't perfect by no stretch of the imagination, but it was nothing near as we would see what happened during World War II. Same thing here in the United States. So this is how things happen. So Hitler was legally elected to office on January 30th, 1933. Legally elected. And his dictates didn't come right away. From 1933 to 1939 is a 6-year period. During that 6-year period, a lot of things happened during that 6-year period. Right? So Donald Trump's not in office yet. But once again, going back to what I originally said, there are certain things, certain signs, if you will, of things to come. Certain things will be taken away. As we will see, because the people who named in this cabinet and others, like for example, they named this racist guy. I can't recall his name, but it was on the front page of the New York Times. Check it out. It was on Thursday. This came out. He's known as an anti-Semite, and he has racist views. This is going to be his chief strategist. Imagine that. That already sends a message out there. There's no people of color whatsoever so far that he's named anywhere in his cabinet as part of his advisors. Nowhere. At least George W. Bush. Name, at least 2. I mean, we didn't get 1, we got 2, people of color to the cabinet. So this is already how we're taking 2 steps back. No people of color is being mentioned for anything whatsoever. So already the sign is there. And to my knowledge, so far, he only mentioned 1 female that he's going to appoint that possibly. That's Eva Markowitz, the Secretary of Education. He's proposing. We'll see if it happens. But this is what we're talking about over here, ladies and gentlemen. When Hitler came into power, we saw things he wrote. We saw, for example, the Nuremberg Laws. The Nuremberg Laws was basically a set of laws that was aimed at Jews. And it did several things. First of all, it prohibited Jews from being in the professions. It barred them, so they couldn't be doctors or lawyers or anything like that any longer, or teachers. If they were, it was done with. It stripped them of their citizenship. That's the thing. So these were German Jews. They were citizens, but they were no longer citizens any longer. It prevented marriage between Jews and Gentiles. That was prohibited. So if you were married to a Jew, and vice versa, Gentiles married to a Jew, Jew married to a Gentile rather, it was now null and void. Now, mind you, it was only the year before. The Nuremberg Laws came in 1935. In 1934, Hitler was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year. You had a lot of American industrialists, even after the Nuremberg Laws were passed, that were admirers of Hitler. Charles Lindbergh, the famous aviator that did the first transatlantic solo flight across the Atlantic to Paris. We have Henry Ford, creator of the Ford automobile and such. And there were other people such as that who admired the things that Hitler has done, who was doing to Germany, even though it was at the expense of minority groups. In addition, if you look at the things that Trump is doing, Trump is planning to do the same thing. A lot of people are not aware of this, but what makes black people and even immigrant citizens of this country is the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment is increasingly under attack. The 14th Amendment encompasses the 14th Amendment is probably one of the most amazing things in the U.S. Constitution. It's probably the most complicated, but at the same token, simplistic amendment there is. The 14th Amendment is basically what made black people or other people citizens of this country and citizens of their state. 14th Amendment is the Equal Protection Clause, which means that we have a right to we have a right to privacy. The 14th Amendment is the amendment, what we call the Due Process Clause, if you will. It's an extension of the of some other amendments in the Bill of Rights. The 14th Amendment is what made things possible. The 14th Amendment is what set the pathway for things, whether you agree with them or not. It set the pathway, for example, for citizenship. It set the pathway for major court cases of Brown versus Board of Ed, desegregation. It set the pathway for a woman's right to choose. It set the pathway for I can marry who I want to marry, both in terms of gender and race. All right. So all these things the 14th Amendment is important for. 14th Amendment is an extension of Title IX, which lets women be who they are in terms of sports and other competitions like that. So the 14th Amendment has served this country well. That is going to be under attack by Trump and his cronies who are going to come into power. And just to say that, well, once again, let's go back to Nazi Germany. If you're getting a little thing there, I'm just trying to do the comparison here for you. Same thing. So you have the Nuremberg laws passed in 1935. Germany began to rearm along the border with France. It was against the Treaty of Versailles. They expanded the military. They were doing all these things. Now, Hitler was giving crumbs to the people. He did employ people in terms of public work projects and building the Autobahn, which is Germany's highway throughout the country. But Germany was slowly rearming itself. Now, here you have a person who says he claims he could defeat ISIL, or as Americans like to say, ISIS. And you have Muslim countries that can defeat ISIS. And the thing is this, instead of isolating Muslims, we need to cooperate with Muslims, with our Muslim brothers and sisters, because they are catching heck also over there. You see, we only worry about when things blow up in this country and in France or someplace in Europe. We say what a travesty and tragedy, it is, which it is, by the way. It's terrible. Loss of innocent life is terrible. However, we tend to forget that ISIS is doing as much damage over there, more so than over here, on a daily basis, but as it get reported. So those people over there are catching heck. They want ISIS to be defeated as well. So instead of isolating and insulting our Muslim brothers and sisters, we need to say, we need your help, we need your cooperation. And instead of saying all Muslims are bad, which they're not, we need to point to those terrorists who are, doing the damage. And unfortunately, what you have Trump and his cronies doing, they're making everybody seem bad, which is wrong. Going back to Germany, this happened in Germany as well. Jews were targeted, but it just wasn't the Jews. Eventually, it would be other people, because Jews were his main target. But guess what? Eventually, gypsies were targeted as well. Right? Gypsies were known as criminals. That's what they were called all the time. And if you weren't a Jew or a gypsy, guess what? If you happen to have a different sexual orientation, if you're homosexual, right? And you're not doing no crime, you were targeted as well. But guess what? If you were those things, if you were a communist, you really know you were targeted, all right? And then soon, if you were not a Jew, if you were not a gypsy, if you're not a homosexual, if you were not a communist, if you were just someone who just supported the racist ideology of Adolf Hitler, guess what? You were targeted too. So all these groups were targeted, all right? Jehovah's Witnesses were targeted, so there was no religion anymore. So let's talk about here and now. What we're starting to see is people mobilizing. It's about time, because before it was about black people, when people say, oh, we don't want to do that, black people, whatever it is. But now you see other groups coming out the woodwork, right? You see that our Latino brothers and sisters realize, something? We're messed up. We're going to get screwed by this man, all right? We see, well, they should have been on the board with us a long time ago. But now, because before it was just like little murmurs and everything, there was still some control. But now that control is no longer controllable. So you see the vehemently racist, anti-Islamic phobia that's going on in this country, and you see them catching heck as well, right? So now, finally, these groups are saying, you black people, we know you've been going through. Finally, they started to see it, and I think after January 20th, when he's inaugurated, you're going to see this happen even more. So just remember, don't say that this is not far-fetched that this can't happen here. It can't happen here. We already have an example where a country similar to the United States, Germany, cultured, educated, highly industrial. We saw it happen over there. So if it can happen over there, it can happen anywhere. And people just need to be aware of that. Thank you for your time and attention. Have a pleasant afternoon.